make sure. Hold on. Let's just make sure we're in focus. We are in focus. All right, perfect. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to kind of talk about Canon. There was a recent article by YM Cinema. Love reading from that article. I love reading from them. I think they do a nice little coverage, especially in terms of people that are more gearheads like us. If you would ever read them, definitely check it out. But they did this article recently where they covered Sundance, but basically covered how Canon was very absent in the narrative filmmaking of Sundance, and that the Alexa 35 basically dominated, which is to nobody's surprise. Now, the article obviously gives off this impression that Canon is losing markets, and it is and it isn't. Which, in the words of my friend Kofi, we'll get there. They've kind of buried the lead that while Canon kind of has either lost or is no longer present in a lot of the narrative aspects, in the documentary world, it has expanded greatly into Sundance. In terms of documentaries in Sundance, they've actually grown shares at the festival. There's two things I want to tackle in today's video. One is sort of like talking about Canon and Canon cinema cameras in general in terms of this sort of narrative, but then I want to sort of tackle, I think there's a bigger and larger, more important question that we need to ask ourselves regarding Sundance. Again, we'll get there, but let's start off with Canon. And I think the article kind of hits a good portion of it on the head, which is the fact that Canon's ability to just do so much pretty decently well is its biggest benefit and its biggest asset, but it's also its biggest weakness in terms of narrative filmmaking. And it's why it's the fact that their cameras are so great at just getting out of their way. They're workhorses. You can take them through various different types of environments, and they're no fuss about cameras. They work so well, and the fact that you get raw recording in a lot of their newer cameras internally, they've really made a push to it. Combine that with the fact when you look at their lenses and how it works with their autofocus, it's these jack of all trade that and when you combine everything together, it makes them so fantastic for documentary filmmaking, because then you can focus more so on the story that you're telling as a documentarian, and you can focus on your composition. You can focus on getting your movements or getting interactions with your subject a lot easier. However, when it comes to narrative filmmaking, this is a little bit more challenging, and a lot of this has to, and me personally, the article doesn't talk about it, but me personally, the biggest problem is it's the biggest thing that everybody has always asked for from a lot of their prosumer level cameras, which is Canon Log 2. I've talked about Canon Log 2 quite a bit, and I've seen it. If you go see some of my previous videos. I'll leave links in the description, as well as I'll show you guys up here as well. The big benefit of C-Log 2 is that it has the widest amount of dynamic range. But that wide dynamic range, or how much your camera can capture before it hits the clipping points of each end, has a trade-off that I don't think most people talk about, and that is the fact that the way the log essentially lifts the shadows, because this is where really the difference between Log 2 and Log 3 occurs, is the fact that Log 2 aggressively lifts the shadows up. It kind of makes everything flat. It allows you to shoot stuff where you don't really need a lot of light to really get a good scene without it looking to be blown out. The trade-off of that is that it makes it much harder to differentiate the shadow portion. And as someone who used to own the Canon C70, this was extremely true, especially if you're shooting in a scene where everything is sort of in the same monotone, the same part of the color wheel. It makes things go looking flat very easily, very quickly. Whereas other cameras like Sony with their S-Log 3, Blackmagic with their Blackmagic Film, a lot of these other ones, they have this tonality difference in the shadows where even though you will need a lot more light, you can play a lot more, and it's easier to differentiate and sort of and create various tonalities in your scenes that give this more dynamic, this more organic looking feel of the images. And that's sort of that's, like I said, it's the trade-off, is that you will have a scene where you won't have to worry about clips, but if you're not careful with your lighting, or if you're not working hard to try to find ways to cut light, you can find yourself in a scene where everything just looks flat and things sort of muddy together. The other thing is something that fellow YouTuber of mine, Jake, talked about, is that their RAW format, while it is very versatile in terms of it's able to use in almost any NLE, it also has this muddying of the image where it creates these artifacts, especially in very contrasty in the darker areas. And it's something that I've noticed with the C70, and it's something that had always bothered me. It's like, that to me is sort of the things that has really held it back. It's just like Canon needs to really figure out a way to, on one, probably bring a whole different color space. What if it's like a C-Log 4 that can really help with the differentiation of tonalities in their sensors. But the other thing I would argue is that their RAW codecs probably need to be better quality, where it doesn't have such a digital artifacting effect to it. And these are things that really, I believe people that do a lot of these shoot on cinemas this is the reason why. Is because, one, most people are used to shooting with various forms of lights, and the Canon cameras are like almost the complete opposite. You got to take away from it, especially in Log 2, but also with the fact that they're shooting on RLXs, and the quality coming out of the raw codecs and the 16 bits, it's like night and day compared to those. Not the fact that the raw codec is like terrible, it is not, but it is not to the level that some of these things where image quality, especially in narrative film, is seen as the highest of importance. A lot of the Canon cameras just don't, if I'm just from my own personal experience and from what the article talks about, it's like it doesn't hit that next tier that some other competitors actually hit. Again, I need to point out, this is also one of the reasons why it does so well in documentaries, because it still creates a really great looking image, and it allows you to capture things when it happens, which is what sort of more in that documentary field sort of goes with. But I want to take this a little bit beyond Canon, because to me this is also the whole thing with the article, especially with Sundance, goes to be more I personally feel is a little bit of a bigger problem with Sundance, and the fact that maybe it's just me, but I feel Sundance has gotten how should I put this? Coachella. Like, Sundance used to be a place where it felt like a place of gathering of people that love this art, which it's still there. But recently, I don't know. For me, Sundance recently has been more of a vibes type of area, where it's like we're starting to see more people going to be seen, and not necessarily for the love of the art, if that's sort of kind of catching my drift. I guess what I'm trying to get is, because the article talks about like they love the RLX, and from a technical standpoint, yes, but the art, it feels like Sundance is also becoming a bit more of an elitism event, given the fact that, because of its notoriety, and given the fact that, again, this is sort of like It's feel like a stars event, where before it used to be like it used to be very independent, and while it is still very much independent, there's just a it's hard. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it. There's something just new about it that just feels posh. There just seems something very, very wrong that at what is supposed to be one of the biggest independent film festival events, that the most expensive camera on the market for digital filmmaking is the most popular camera to use. It just seems like a conjectory. I'm probably making up words. There's a conjecture about that, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like it's really there for the average independent filmmakers, which Sundance is what it used to be. Sundance, along with South by Southwest, just feels like it's become very Hollywood. And it's become an event for of who's and being seen with who's instead of like being something that is to be a celebratory moment for the creative mindsets and the creatives of this space. Look, this may be just me, but and I may be on my own about this. I don't know. That's just sort of how I felt about it. But I would love to know what you guys feel. I would love to know how you feel about Canon not really showing up in narrative filmmaking, but also what do you think of Sundance and in these major film festivals now, and sort of where their stance is. I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know. Leave your comments down below. And as always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, take care, everyone.